Hello, this is Sela. Furthermore, I did not receive an invitation to my own family's reunion. Once more, 10 years, I spent 10 years in silence, having my name erased from photographs and seeing empty place cards. They said that I was too theatrical, too aloof, and too sensitive. This time, however, I purchased the entire freaking beach home, rather than battling for a place at their table. The front desk asked them a straightforward question when they arrived with their coordinated baggage, staged grins, and meticulously planned memories. "Are you on Miss Sela Reed's guest list?" And they had to either utter my name or leave for the first time in 10 years. It all began on a typical Monday morning when your coffee is cold before you even take a drink. I'd normally be halfway through a half-eaten protein bar, drowning in unanswered emails, and mentally preparing for irrelevant client calls. However, something else appeared that morning. For some reason, my breath became trapped in my throat. The subject line was simultaneously devastating, phony cheerful, and bright. RSVP now for Reed Family Beach Week 2025. I ran my fingertips across the trackpad before I could convince myself otherwise. I clicked. And there it was. The list included Trinity, Bryce, Aunt Melanie, and even Darren, who hasn't been seen since the Bush era, except for me. There was no grammatical error. I wasn't overlooked. I was left out. It was nothing new. When I contacted Trinity in tears, she replied that the invitation from last year must have gone to spam. With a strained laugh, she said, "You know how tech can be," as if deleting me from the family schedule was only a peculiar Gmail bug. This time, though, it struck a different chord when I saw it written out in black and white, while everyone was talking as if I didn't exist. Additionally, there were pictures of the fire pit, the same one where when I was 8 years old, I burned marshmallows before realizing that love in this family had conditions, deadlines, and a performance clause. Hoping for a second email, I scrolled below. An update. Something, however, I was well aware of this. My workspace felt too bright and antiseptic due to the sun streaming in through the window of my Santa Monica condominium. Like muscle memory, I swiveled my chair in the direction of the bookcase and noticed the turquoise glass seashell. It was still hidden beneath a half-dead jade plant behind marketing books. I haven't opened in years. I received it as a birthday gift on my 10th birthday. My mother told me it looked like something unique for my special girl when she purchased it from a dusty antique shop down the highway. That was before Mom referred to Trinity as her legacy, introduced me to her friends as the one who works too much, and taught me that being the youngest did not equate to more affection, but rather to being helpful for a longer period of time. "Are you all right?" I leaped. My office neighbor and coworker Remy was standing at my desk, his mug of strong green tea in hand. "Just spam," I said, forcing a grin. Not persuaded, he cocked his head. From them once more, I didn't respond. I didn't have to. I shut down my laptop. On my desk unopened was the promotion paperwork for the 38-year-old senior VP, the youngest in the company's history. I had bled for it. 12-hour workdays. Boardroom games of chess are a common activity. Attending meetings with men who didn't understand the difference between volume and vision made me smile, but to them, to my relatives, it was me who lost her origins, worked too much, and traveled too far. It buzzed on my phone. My soul cousin Savannah, who continued to act like I was a human, texted me. "I saw the invitation. Do you want to wreck it for fun?" I hovered my thumbs. I then typed, "Or perhaps I should stop laughing." I went back to the real estate listings link, which I had saved months before. Specifically, I focused on the seaside mansion. This property served as the backdrop for Trinity's maternity photographs. They failed to inform me about the disagreement that occurred during my parents' 30th wedding anniversary celebration, which took place while I was out of state delivering a keynote address. It was available for purchase, silently. There was no sound. There was no familial connection. Like they were selling it along with the rest of their conscience, it was just a covert for sale tucked away in a local listing. I continued staring at the picture of the porch, the view of the water, and the identical Adirondack chairs, where my dad used to read me East of Eden until he started acting as though he didn't hear my cries. Thereafter, I selected Contact Agent. My phone rang before I had even had time to process the confirmation email. My chest constricted when I heard the ringtone that I had given her years prior. I didn't have to search. My mom was the one I gave the phone 2 rings. Then I responded. "Hello, Mom." I responded bluntly, already preparing myself. In that sugary manner she often used before slashing into me with something cutting yet kind. She said, "Oh, Selah, sweetheart. We were just talking about you." I interrupted. "I'm going to venture that either Nelson's girlfriend has a pillow allergy or Trinity's kids need the bunk room once more. Am I near?" I could picture her squinting at her manicured nails, unsure of which script to follow next during the brief stillness. She stretched the term like taffy and eventually added, "Well, you know how crazy it gets with the small ones, and well, space is just restricted this year." It was there. They constantly used the same lousy phrase. They treated my absence as if it was solely a matter of logistics. It was as though love had no bearing on the situation. "Don't you understand?" Softly, almost pathetically, she said. That voice from 2 years ago came back to me. The tone was the same, and the time of year was the same. The previous time I tried to visit, she was there. The night before, she phoned in a whisper, as if she were confessing a crime in church. "Don't you understand? The little ones need the bunk room," was the phrase at the time. It was "space is limited." This time, "you're not worth accommodating," was what she truly meant each time. "Thanks for the heads up," I responded, suddenly cool and collected. "I understand perfectly." I then hung up the phone. I didn't do so out of anger with clarity. I refrained from crying. I didn't throw my phone with the composure of someone who has anticipated this. I just entered the kitchen and got myself a drink of water. I returned to my desk and accessed the Selah Personal Finances spreadsheet. Like soldiers in formation, the numbers gazed back at me, well prepared. Devoted, all set. I looked at my stock options, vesting schedules, and liquid assets. I located the line that read discretionary, and then I whispered to myself, "All right, let's play Savannah." Texted me again 10 minutes later. I took a screenshot. As if she knew how painful they were, she would always warn me before sending them. This one, I felt completely devastated. Group chat. Core reads, "Only is the title Trinity. Selah won't be returning. This time, let's proceed without the drama." A gif of a peace symbol and several laughing emojis follows. In response, Uncle Mark said, "That girl needs therapy." I didn't respond, not aloud. However, something constricted inside, not because of anger or despair. Clearly, they weren't just leaving me out. They were rewriting my story. Put the blame on my absence. The group shot muted me, and then each person received a microphone to share the version of myself that best fit their story. When I remained silent, they labeled it instability. They labeled it distance after seeing my restrictions. I permitted them to label it that way for an extended period. "I'm not the shadow that left the light behind," I said to no one. I managed to avoid the cold. I recalled the summer of my 10th birthday at the same beach home. I sculpted a mermaid on the damp sand for 3 hours. I fashioned her hair from seaweed necklace made of pebbles, shell, earring. In awe, everyone had clustered around it. Trinity then took a step closer, touched the mermaid's head, and grinned for the camera. My mother clapped and exclaimed happily, "She's so creative." She was referring to Trinity. She received no correction. I didn't even correct her. As they celebrated Trinity's skill downstairs that evening, I sobbed in the bunk room. It didn't matter, I told myself. They simply forgot. However, I never forgot. I launched the real estate application once more. It was there, the listing, that residence, our home. This time, there's no hesitation. I arranged for a private viewing. This is not a public event. Not a warning, just take action, silent, intentional, and unchangeable. I entered a seaside office the following morning that appeared to have been featured in a brochure for a high-end cruise liner, walls made of glass breeze from the sea, beneath the scent of ink and eucalyptus. A gentle jazz melody hums. When she noticed me, the woman behind the desk got up, curls of gray lavender scarf. The eyes radiate warmth. She smiled and remarked, "You must be Selah." "Duh. You told me you were coming today." "Thanks for letting me in," I said, nodding. On her iPad, she displayed the listing. Then she stopped and cocked her head. "It's funny," she said. "I recognize your name. Has anything to do with the present owners?" "Yes," I said steadily as I met her gaze. "However, it won't last long." The smell of memories and dust hit me as I entered the storage unit. I hadn't opened Unit 43B in over 5 years. Everything I had packed up following my father's most recent hospital stay was inside furnishings for colleges. Crates filled with books are available for purchase. The box bears the fading Sharpie. Grandma's room label. She placed her cedar trunk in the back corner. I ignored the years of quiet and pushed it ahead. With a powerful tug, the unyielding clasp gave way. Lavender sachets are within. The scent of secrets and ancient wood permeates the space. A notebook was the first item I noticed. Ocean blue. She adhered seashells to the corners of her distinctly awkward design. There's an envelope underneath sealed. In her skewed script, she addressed, "Open only when you cease seeking permission. Selah." I opened it while sitting cross-legged on the concrete floor. It was not lyrical. The poem consisted of just a few lines. "You'll realize why I left this for you one day. It's not always our parents who show us love. It occasionally slips between the gaps. If the stillness becomes overwhelming, please feel free to use this." "Grandma," I blinked. "Go over it again." My throat ached. There's a trust document below it. Actual lawful. My name, her signature observed, notarized. A provision that states, the designated beneficiary. Selah Reed retains the right to execute a full transfer of title in the event that current deed holders default on taxes or property obligations. The following morning, I was 5 chess moves ahead when I entered McKinley & Ward LLP. The lawyer, a silver-haired partner wearing a rust-colored tie and glasses on his nose, whistled slowly as he perused the documents. He tapped the page and said, "This clause isn't just enforceable, it's a damn checkmate." He checked his spectacles. "Not only do you have leverage if your parents let their insurance lapse or defaulted on their property taxes, you are the owner. Within 14 business days of filing this petition, you will get the title. 14 days. They would spend the same amount of time packing their coolers, buying inexpensive wine, and presuming they still had the house to furnish." Her diary was in my lap as I sat by my window that afternoon. I did not write it, I just touched the shells with my fingertips. Then, I grabbed the one made of turquoise glass. According to my mother, that one looked particularly lovely for her special girl. I set it next to the journal. It shares the same hue, the same sheen. The resistance remains subdued. This was not retaliation. It was a moment of remembering. Furthermore, I wasn't only taking back a home. I was taking back the real self that I had always been. My coffee the following morning was bitter and dark, precisely how I prefer it when I am feeling low. I accessed my laptop and checked my email. At the very top, subject final RSVP for Brooks Family Beach Week, 20, from Trinity's private Gmail account. The family thread was absent this time. There was no greeting in the email. No, "Hello, Selah. The logistics are the sole focus room assignments. The schedule includes time slots for beach games, a well-selected Spotify playlist. This includes the entire schedule." However, my name was still missing, not even in the column labeled, "Maybe no note." There was no error made. There is absolutely no place for me to be. I remained invisible. Once more, Savannah received another ping. 5 minutes later, Savannah. Subject: "That place is something you must see. Additional screenshots are included. We call the group chat Core Reads Only. Trinity stated again, Selah will not be attending this time. Let's proceed smoothly this time, avoiding any controversy." Nelson most likely replied with a gif of a peace sign and a laughing emoji. Your mom just asked if I'd be okay staying in your old room, Savannah continued in her message. She mentioned that the room was simply sitting empty. That sentence was read twice for me. I was in your old room. My grandma sewed the quilt by hand. She constructed me a bookcase. When I was 12, we created this mural together. I wrote my first essay for a college application. At this little brass desk, they weren't only leaving me out, they were giving the wolves my bones. I refrained from crying. I took a seat back, shut my eyes, and let the revelation sink in like a chill. I then launched the real estate website. I was able to access the back-end system. I could now legally access it. Calendar view reservations, control the guest list. There was just one room left unoccupied. The suite of Master's King bed, personal deck. There is a complete view of the ocean. With a cautious smile, I entered the following information into the reservation form. Miss S. Reed is the guest arrival date. Friday, stay duration 3 nights. Notes: put the Perrier Jouet bottle on ice. The guest wants total solitude, cotton linens and firm pillows. Click. A few seconds later, I received confirmation in my mailbox. Now they had an unexpected visitor for their reunion. He was the genuine owner. I was sitting at my apartment that night, sipping a glass of red wine and using my phone to go through old picture archives. Birthday celebrations, meals for graduation reunions. The person behind the camera was always me. Alternatively, it cropped out. I paused at a single picture. Trinity's birthday cake has blown out the candles. I was grinning just behind her. The web version has cropped out my face. To them, I was that person. An add-on. This add-on serves a practical purpose. This serves as a source of funding during times of need until I was no longer required. When I last stood up for myself years ago, I recalled what my father had said. Sela, it seems you might be taking things a bit too personally. It's not all about you. But it was about me, this place, this time. I didn't need recognition, but because I was able to hold the pen at last. Additionally, I was reinscribing myself to the narrative. I sent Savannah a brief note before going to bed. I appreciate the heads up. Keep your plans intact. Prepare yourself for some uncomfortable silences. She responded with a laughing emoji and 3 words. This is what I live for. They were no longer the only ones who could borrow the home. I owned it. It was the individual who carried out the task. The master suite comes next. Grandma was buried in a peaceful area of the globe, so the following day I traveled inland away from the beach and the bustle across twisting hills and orange fields. There was not a single blossom in sight. There was minimal fanfare. She indulged in a scoop of ice cream infused with lavender honey. From the small store she held dear, atop a sugar cone for balance. It was customary, she observed a type of behavior that no one else ever experienced. Her burial took place between 2 rose bushes. Her preference was usually herbs. She had once muttered, "Roses are just insecure flowers. Give me something useful like basil or thyme." I sat next to her cross-legged on the grass that had warmed up in the sun, grinning. I said, my voice just above the wind, "Hey, Grandma, they're doing it once more." You would roll your eyes wildly. Before I could say anything more, the wind responded. I carefully positioned the ice cream in front of her nameplate, then muttered, "I remember you telling me to keep my voice down. Simply increase my worth." Grandma, I did. Yes, I did. My phone buzzed as I made my way back to the car. The Brooks family received a message from the group chat, Nelson, naturally. I asked to use the master suite. It's nice to be back. The comments began to pour in. Nelson, classic, before the children destroy it, claim it. Nobody questioned it. Nobody inquired as to who made the reservation. I went unnoticed, or perhaps all they wanted was for me to remain unnoticed. This time, though, it's different. I typed after opening the thread. I already have that room reserved in my name. I then clicked send. A beat went by quiet. Then there was silence across the thread. The thread was devoid of any emojis, no gifs. Don't laugh, simply silence. The private message followed. Trinity, what do you want to accomplish? I responded after glancing at the flickering cursor. I'm not making an effort. I told you. You never took me seriously. A few seconds later, she was marked as seen. I logged out, disabled the chat, and silenced the topic. I didn't act out of anger, from a state of calm. When you no longer need someone else's approval to live, you start to behave as though you own the land you walk on. And I actually did in this instance. I opened a fresh document on my laptop that evening. It was titled, Just for the Record. The intention was not to exact retribution. This is not intended for display. These are just the facts. The reality that they had disregarded for more than 10 years. There was now a legal provision in the truth, a trust. And my complete name in bold is spelled appropriately. Each invitation had excluded my name. Now, though, they would now need to speak it aloud at the desk for check-in. I got it just right. All morning I had observed the clouds moving across the Pacific. The type of weather that makes the air hum, as if the earth is holding its breath, is soft gray rather than stormy. I waited for them to come. I saw them pull up one by one from the ridge, immediately above the beach, home. Trinity drove a brand new white Audi. The fishing poles on the roof of Nelson's enormous SUV gave the impression that he utilized them. Then Mom Iris arrived in her worn-out silver car, still sporting the proud grandma badge, as if it absolved her of any responsibility. They failed to notice me. In actuality, they never had. Around 6:45 p.m., someone unloaded suitcases, gift bags, a boombox, and all the other typical signs of a phony, joyous family reunion. The salt in the air muted their laughter as it reverberated off the breezeway. I waited. I had ample time to wait. Then, with purposeful composure, I rolled my rental car over the gravel. As I moved ahead slowly and steadily, I entered the lobby after parking near the side door. The front desk was where they were, Trinity living arms, thrashing a little. Nelson leaned forward as if he owned the counter. Mom's lips were pursed, as if she were simultaneously suppressing indigestion and disgust. With her fingers hanging over the keyboard, the young woman at the desk appeared overwhelmed. I apologize, she continued gently, but you are not included in the guest list for Miss Selah Reed. Trinity's expression contorted. Pardon me. Her tone was piercing. What your screen says doesn't matter to me. This property is the home of our family. For more than 2 decades, we have been visiting this place. The front desk agent blinked. Once, twice. Then she noticed me. With a look of relief on her shoulders, she replied, Oh, Miss Reed, I was just explaining. I moved to stand next to Trinity and said, There's no need to escalate. Let me explain. Nelson stood up. Selah, what is this? Is this some sort of joke? Do you truly find this amusing? I think the time has come. I gave my ID to the receptionist. We completed the deed 3 weeks ago. I own the house. Quiet. It doesn't wait for someone to say something, the sort that engulfs a space. Mom gripped her pocketbook tightly, as if it were a protection. You purchased it. That isn't feasible. I answered calmly but firmly. No, Mom. It's not just feasible. It's lawful. It's tidy. It's final, too. You should have reviewed Grandma's trust. Or simply check your mail. Trinity's face became white. Selah, you were aware that we were organizing this. We intended this to be our reunion. We intended this to be our space. I turned to face her and said, And I was destined to be your sister, your daughter. But you didn't include me in any of your emails. Each invitation, each picture. So I got in on my own. The receptionist glanced between us, uncertain whether to move away or disappear completely. Nelson gave a snort. "You think you can just kick us out and call it a day? Do you believe you've won anything?" I looked him in the eyes and replied, "No, Nelson. I lost. I took it back. There is a distinction." I looked over at the cashier. "Please escort anyone who is not on my guest list. Naturally, they will be treated with kindness." They share a common bond. A lengthy pause ensued. Then, without urgency or hostility, she took up the phone and dialed security. This was typical behavior for her. Behind me, Trinity muttered, "We'll argue over this. Our lawyer will contact you." I didn't even look back. You might want to go over the section about failing maintenance and delinquent taxes again. You'd be shocked at how much was already happening on your guest list before you hit send. Mom came forward. She spoke in a little voice. "Do you really despise us?" I pivoted, stopped. "I don't hate you." I stated plainly without being mean. "I simply gave up expecting you to change." Thereafter, I made my way to the elevator. Their words vanished like sea foam in the wind, and the metal doors behind me slid shut. The task was far from complete. It was not even close to being finished. When I heard the knock, I had just steeped my tea. I was not at the entrance at the oceanfront window. A news vehicle's dazzling pulse of headlights followed the abrupt knock. Already a man with a microphone was modifying his posture for the camera, all makeup and phony grins. Another man gestured toward the home. I knew what was going to happen before I even heard the introduction. The reporter launched as soon as I opened the door. "Could you verify, Miss Reed, if you forced your aging father to sign over the family's property?" He wasn't of sound mind, according to sources. I didn't respond. I also didn't slam the door. I simply shut it, silently, similar to the turning of a chapter. My phone was already vibrating when I walked across the living room. Text following text from colleagues, from cousins I hadn't spoken to since the funeral for Grandma. Does any of this make sense? The email then arrived. Notification of temporary injunction. The court must immediately vacate 322 Ocean View Boulevard while it reviews the case. Financial penalties may be imposed for violations. Lastly, the icing on the cake. Here's a screen grab of Savannah Trinity's most recent post on Facebook. "Someone who betrays her own family never receives love. I offer up prayers for her soul." The comments came pouring in. Emojis of fire flooded the comments section. I saw faces filled with sorrow. I received "please excuse your family" letters from strangers who had no idea who I was. I gazed at my mobile device. I'm not in shock. This was done out of disdain. They wanted a story like this, in the hopes that I would be too embarrassed to reply. They were writing it quickly. However, I didn't feel defeated. I kept silent. Savannah sent another message during that silence. They desired war. Let's begin with the truth. The files followed screenshots, dozens group conversations that are private, emails, notes from gatherings to which I was not invited. "She's too busy being important to care about family," my mother said. "Don't feel guilty about leaving her out. She is accustomed to being by herself." Trinity making fun of me. "She's really sensitive. It wears you out." It went beyond simple exclusion. The campaign was one of smears. I sat in the master suite, which was now fully mine, and looked at a picture on the dresser across the room. I was 7 years old when I clung to my father's knee, and we both laughed so hard that the picture was blurry. I used to believe that love was a given. At the time, I had no idea that silence could be a weapon. I refrained from crying. Not immediately. Grandma used to line the built-in bookcases with poetry volumes, and I walked down the stairs and ran my fingers over them. Behind the final row was something I extracted, a little seashell, by reaching inside ivory with a thin band of blue. When I was 10, Dad helped me locate it. He had pressed it into my hand as if it were holy and said, "You deserve everything good this world can give you." Now I held on to it tightly as if it were a lifeline. I said, "You said that once. However, the individual who made that statement is no longer alive. The information was not included in court documents anyway. I opened my laptop while still holding the shell, made a new folder, and started storing all of the evidence Savannah had supplied. I was no longer hiding. I was recording. I wasn't just some unnoticed girl on the periphery of the family portrait. I was the hurricane they didn't anticipate, because they failed to realize that when you live your entire life, you are left out of the narrative. You gain the ability to rewrite your narrative, with endurance, with proof. It also includes the indisputable truth. I should have anticipated the storm, but nothing truly gets you ready to be publicly portrayed as the bad guy by your family. It wasn't a gentle or unsure knock on the window. Instead, it was accompanied by the flash of a news van's spotlights and the slick smile of a reporter who had already practiced the piece in his mind. I went out onto the porch, slowly barefoot, and wearing the only item that still felt protective, a sweater my grandmother had crocheted years before. Kaida Ulrich, Miss. Can you confirm whether you coerced your father into signing over the family property while he was mentally compromised? He said, the microphone already uncomfortably near. According to sources, you exploited an elderly person who was at risk for financial advantage. I shut the door, just not in a furious way. At last, my phone glowed like a Christmas tree inside. I received texts from neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years, old coworkers and distant cousins. Is this accurate? Are you all right? Family drama is difficult, isn't it? One email in particular caught my attention. Trinity and Iris filed an emergency order requiring me to leave the residence until the court reviews it. Violation of occupancy, immediate compliance required, was the subject line. As if that weren't enough. Savannah sent me a screen grab of Trinity's most recent Facebook post, which was already receiving many comments. I never loved a woman who rebelled against her own blood. I pardon her. I only hope she gets better soon. The comments came flooding in. Heartbreaking, praying, she is deserving of grace. They had removed the knife, flipped it, and presented it to the public with a ribbon. I sat there feeling hollow, not sobbing or trembling. I didn't find it unpleasant, but it was because I had been grieving for these individuals for a considerable amount of time, strolling through the house like a ghost. I arrived at my grandmother's old office. I discovered a pale seashell wind chime, dusty and entangled in fishing line, when I opened the bottom drawer of her file cabinet. One of the letters, painted blue, had entirely chipped away. When I was 8 years old, we made it together. She once said, "You don't need to replace everything that breaks." I could still remember that. A steadier hand is just necessary for some tasks. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and gradually unraveled the mess. Just string breath and the sound of the waves crashing outside. No glue, no hurry. By the time the sun came up, the wind chime was once more producing song as it swayed softly from the porch beam. After a day, Savannah showed up with a grocery bag and a bottle of wine. "You didn't believe that I would abandon you to face this alone, did you?" As if it were a holy rite, she handed me a roll of paper towels and a block of cheese. We cleaned the worktops where Trinity used to place critiques and charcuterie boards, folded the blankets Iris used for preferred guests, and as we were enjoying a glass of Pinot Grigio on the patio, she turned to face me and remarked, "You didn't just win, Kaida. You took down the throne." I took a while to reply. In the sea breeze, I saw the wind chime twirl. It sang of peace rather than victory. I received a knock at the front gate later that week. The neighbor from 2 homes down, Mrs. Donnelly, was standing there with a tin of lemon bars in her hand. She smiled and continued, "I just wanted to say, welcome home. You know, your dad used to talk about you being greater than the others. You were always the clever one." I blinked. "Did he?" I asked, hardly able to speak. "You said you were the one who inquired about the tide tables at 6, she said, nodding. "That girl thinks in tides," he informed me. I never forgot that I handled the lemon bar tin with the care it deserved, holding a battered atlas in one hand and my father's attention in the other. I briefly felt like I was 6 years old again. She waved as she went, and I stood there with the wind chime talking behind me in the porch light. They might never say sorry. It was no longer my responsibility to correct that, but perhaps there would never be a family meal where someone finally said, "We were wrong. This wasn't about seeking revenge. Reclamation was at issue here. I did not set the bridge on fire. I simply gave up pleading with it to cross." And I went through each room, turning out the lights one by one as the sun went down, and the corridor turned golden. I stopped as I got to the front door. Avoid listening to them. Don't prepare yourself, only to take a breath. Finally, silently, I shut it from the inside.